the first maybe 4 years of the business, you're doing three things at once. You're working in the business, so just getting the business going, serving customers, answering phone calls. In my case, at certain periods, mowing grass. And then you're working on the business. What's the marketing system look like? What's the employee recruitment system look like? What's the employee retention system look like? How do we activate cold customers? All of these things, working on the business. And then you're working on yourself.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, Bryan Clayton. And Bryan started, to start his journey, started mowing lawns in high school to make some cash. Made about $20 the first time he did some mowing and was hooked. And so decided he would take that as far as he could. So he built a bit of a business around it, grew it. And also, I think, continued when he was in college doing it as well as he was deciding to go forward. Went to college, graduated, built the business, or started a business and built that over 15 years. Sold that business and then retired. But then got bored, so I thought about an app for doing Uber, but for lawn mowing. Recruited a couple co-founders and started building that app. The first year it was a total flop and failure, in his own words. Built a second version of it and got a few hundred customers. 9 years into it, they now have over 300,000 customers using the app, and they never had to take any inside capital probably, but outside capital, and are still growing. And all of his businesses have been self-funded, which kudos to him. So, with that much as introduction, welcome on the podcast, Bryan.
Great intro, Devin. Thanks so much. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Absolutely. So I just took a much longer journey and condensed it into the 30-second version. So let's unpack that a bit and tell us how your journey got started in high school mowing lawns.
Yeah. You just nailed 20 years of entrepreneurship, 2 businesses in one industry. But yeah, I started cutting grass in high school as a way to make extra cash. And I was like forced into the business by my father. He made me go mow the neighbor's yard on a hot summer day. And like you said, I made $20 doing that, got hooked. And I thought, this is great. I can work as hard as I want to work and make as much money as I want to make. Why doesn't everybody do this? And so
people like capitalism. It's great.
I don't understand this. This is incredible. And the first thing I did is I passed out a bunch of flyers all over the neighborhood and got like a dozen customers that first year, and always had more cash than my friends. And it was just amazing. I loved it and stuck with that lawn mowing business all through high school, all through college. And then when I graduated business school, I thought, well, what now? I didn't really want to be a lawn guy my whole life. I didn't think that's what I went to college for, but I thought, well, maybe this could be my lane. This could be the thing that I can kind of work really hard in and make something of myself. And I made a little business plan, and over a 15-year period of time, ended up growing that lawn care company into one of the largest landscaping businesses in the state of Tennessee. Eventually getting it over 8 million a year, or 8 figures a year in revenue.
Before you get too far into your journey. So you did this in high school, which you mentioned, and then you continue to do it as you're going to college, right?
That's right. So I went to school, went to night school in college. It took me like 6 years to get an undergrad, but because I just went nights and weekends.
Mm-hmm.
But mowed yards, cut grass all day, and so I put myself through school. And also bought my first house when I was like 20 years old. So business ownership afforded me the ability to avoid student debt and also to start investing in real estate at a very young age, which was great.
Let me ask one other question, because that makes sense. I assume when you got into high school and even maybe early into college, you didn't necessarily, I'm reading in there, so I put words in your mouth so you could take them out and tell me that they're the wrong words. But I assume that it wasn't necessarily that you're saying, here is the industry that I'm going to be spending the rest of my life in. And you went to college, got, kind of went the normal path or got the degree, but then you found that you were good at business. It was a good stream of income. You enjoyed it and it was worthwhile to pursue. Is that kind of right? Am I reading that right?
Yeah, nailed it. I had no dreams and aspirations to be a lawn guy my whole life. In fact, I hated cutting grass. I hated the landscaping business. Hated the smell of cut lawns. Hated the smell of mulch. But I saw that it could work at a bigger scale because I had 2 or 3 employees, and I just did some duplication and understood that if I had 4 or 5 of these crews out there working every day and I was managing them and doing sales, that I could actually build a business doing this. And so I laid out a little business plan and did that and executed against that plan, and eventually growing it to over 150 employees and 8 figures a year in revenue, over a little over 10 million a year in revenue. So luckily I saw that as my lane and kind of just put everything I had into it, and was able to build a good company in it, and it get acquired too, which doesn't happen very often in this industry. Rarely are these businesses ever bought and sold. So that was a hell of a journey, and learned a lot about building a business, growing a company, leadership, systems, processes. That kind of teed me up for when I started Green Pal, that I kind of was already on first base for learning the things that you got to learn to get a business going.
So now before we dive to Green Pal, which we definitely will, but you kind of circling back just a bit. So came out of college, and I just out of curiosity, what was the degree in college that you got?
Business administration, and which was congruent with what I was doing. But when I was in school, when I was in college, I'm taking these business classes, and I'm like, this ain't how business works. I'm running a business, and like, they're not teaching me stuff like marketing. They're not teaching me leadership. They're not teaching me management. They're not teaching me customer service. They're not teaching me value proposition and how to develop a competitive advantage, and even stuff like managing your personal psychology when growing a business. College doesn't really teach you about entrepreneurship and founding a company. It teaches you more or less maybe the nuts and bolts of maybe of running a business, but not starting one from scratch. And so,
and I'm right there with you, because I ended up getting way too many degrees, but one of the 4 degrees I got was an MBA, and I was doing that. Happened to be a different kind of story, but I started my first startup while I was getting the law degree and the MBA degree, and I'd go to the MBA school, which is much like business administration, just a master version versus the bachelor, but I think they cover a lot of the same things, or at least I think. And I'd look and say, half of this seems really fluffy, like is great in concept, and I think for me it was worthwhile in the sense I got some good foundational knowledge and tools and things to work off of. But on the other hand, I'm saying half of this I never see how it's going to apply. It's very fluffy. It's kind of just very on the philosophical level, and when you get into business, then you have to have practical application. So I couldn't agree more that you're coming out and you're getting a lot better education or a lot better practicality in running the business. So I always have the opinion you should be running a business if you're as you're going to college, and you get that real application. So now you come out of college, you build, you say, okay, whether or not I love the smell of cut grass, which I still like the smell of cut grass. So I haven't got to your level, but I probably haven't cut nearly as many grasses or lawns. But you're saying, okay, this is a good business. I can grow it. I can do the business side of it. I can market, I can sell, I can build a team and do all that. And you do that over the period of 15 years. And then you mentioned an acquisition. What was the prompting for the acquisition? Was it just, hey, the proverbial too good of an offer I can't refuse? Or was it, hey, I finally got to a point I want to do something different or pursue something or have a new idea, or I just want to retire? Or kind of what made you prompt to, after putting 15 years in building the business, to say, hey, I want to do something else?
Yeah, I never intended to build the company to sell it. And so ideally, if that is your end game, that's your goal, that's your dream, you should, well, first read a book called Built to Sell, which is a really good book about how to groom your business and build it in such a manner that you could get it acquired. But that's not how I built it. And the reason why I sold it was because I realized something at about year 13, that my business was the thing that was causing me to move forward in life. It was the thing that causing me to learn things that I never would have learned and take on new challenges and conquer new territory. And I had kind of hit a plateau in that part of my life. I was running this business. I had kind of almost taken it as far as I could take it. And it was very profitable, and we had a great culture there, and we were doing really good. But for me to kind of get to the next level of the game would have required me to maybe take it multi-city or do something, or move into an adjacent space or something like that. And I didn't really have the desire to do that. So I kind of reached a personal plateau in terms of my personal development. And it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks one day. I was like, you know what? I should have explore an exit, explore selling this company. And from the moment that I had that notion to the moment that I was able to get it sold was like a little over 2 years. And really probably two of the hardest years that I have ever had in business was getting that business groomed for sale, because I had to reverse engineer a lot of things into the company that weren't there. And also the way you run a business as like a family business versus one that you intend to sell are vastly different. Just things with how you make investments into the company and how you manage expenses and how you avoid certain expenses are very, very, very different. So if it's your plan or your eventual goal or dream to sell your company, start now, work a 5-year process and start doing the things today that you need to be doing to maximize that outcome.
No, and I think that there's a lot of wisdom there. And I think, I think that you can build it to sell. And a lot of people are saying, hey, I just enjoy it. And you get to a point in that you're saying either I've taken it as far as I want to take it, or I'm worn out with it, or, it's a good offer. And, all of the different things are coming together. And so you say, okay, this is a good time to make an exit. I've had a good run. It's still a good business. It has a lot of value. And so you're going to make the exit. And so, you sell the business. And then I think you mentioned, if correct me if I'm wrong, that you said, okay, I'm going to take a bit of retirement or take a step back, or otherwise take a breather after, running in the startup or small business world for now over 15 years. So is that right? Is that kind of the next step that you took for a period of time?
Yeah, that's right. When I sold the company, I thought, wow, that was really hard. And I'm beat. I'm whooped. I was 32 or 33, but I felt like I was 73. Like it was really, really challenging getting that company sold. And it was also very stressful running a business that size and in that particular industry. It's very much organized chaos and hand-to-hand combat on a daily basis. And so I took some time off, and maybe it was like a little over 6 months, and then I quickly got bored. Quickly realized something about myself, that I was wired to want to be in the game. I was wired to want to be a part of something that was bigger than myself, and that this was now missing out of my life, and it was almost like a hole that wasn't there. And a lot of my identity was wrapped up in that previous company, so it was like almost like I had an identity crisis almost. And so I thought, well, I want to start another business. I certainly don't want to do that again, because that was really challenging. I want to do something easy. I'll start a software business. And boy, I didn't know what I didn't know. I thought, I had the idea for an app needed to exist for ordering lawn mowing services, much like an Uber or a Lyft or even like an Airbnb. I thought an app needs to make all of this easier. And so I thought, how hard could it be? I'll just pay some developers and we'll build it and we'll launch it and market it, and we'll just be off and going. And recruited 2 co-founders, and we went to work on the idea quickly. Not quickly, it took 9 months to build the first version. But once we released that version, we quickly realized, like, wow, this is a lot harder than we thought it was going to be. And one thing that I under indexed on, or really didn't know, was that there's a big difference between running an existing type of business, an existing type of industry, like a construction company, maybe a house cleaning service, landscaping business, restaurant, whatever, versus inventing a brand new product from scratch that does not exist. Nobody knows how to use it. Nobody knows it exists. Nobody knows to even use it. And a multi-sided marketplace at that, connecting buyers and sellers. I didn't know what I didn't know. And we were quickly confronted with the reality of, wow, this is going to be really hard. But we stuck it out. We just kept on trying to grow the numbers. We ended our first year with like 25 customers. But we got enough validation from those first few customers to know that this was a good idea, that people wanted an app like this. People wanted to use something like this. And we just kept our nose to the grindstone. And now we're a 9-10 year overnight success. We have like 300,000 people using this app to get their grass cut.
Oh, that's awesome. But now, one of the things, just not to gloss over too much, and it's always what we want to gloss over, which is you talked about a little bit the first year was a flop, but it's a failure. And I get that you had a few customers, but it was, first of all, software always seems like it's going, you get the budget, you get the time frame, and then it always is like way more expensive and takes so much longer. And you're like, why is this taking so long? Why is it so hard? So I definitely get that, having done that on other industries where we've done software, and it always makes it look easy because software is just on a computer. It should be easy, but it's not. But even then, to compound that is now you're taking and creating a new industry or kind of a new segment of way people approach it. And so what was it, and it's sometimes hard to pinpoint, but what was it that kind of made it that first year, in your words when we talked before the podcast, kind of a flop or a failure? What caused that, and how did you figure that out or adapt it to make it a success later on or in the next version?
Couple of things that I miscalculated and didn't really understand, because I had never done this before. I had ran a traditional business, but I never started a tech company. Is one thing was that you don't really know what the hell you're building. So you have an idea of what the app should look like, what it should be, how the interfaces should be designed, what features it should have, what people want, but you really don't know. And no piece of technology survives first contact with the customer. And so it's kind of like building a house or maybe even a skyscraper with no blueprints. And you're just kind of taking your best guesses on what people want and what people would like to see the features to be and what people would like for it to do, but you really don't know. And so then you release it, and then you realize all the places that you had these invalidated assumptions, and then you have to iterate and correct and fix those things. So that's one problem. The second problem was none of us knew how to code. We didn't know how to build software. We weren't engineers. And so you take the you take the house plan example, and on top of all that, you have to you're at the mercy of a development agency to do these change orders and stuff, and it's a nightmare. You cannot go through the cycles quick enough. Looking back, it's as stupid as trying to start a 5-star restaurant with no chef. How silly is that? Well, that's what starting a tech company with no development talent in the team is kind of is impossible as starting a restaurant with no chef or no recipes. And so we quickly we realized, wow, this is harder than we thought on many different paradigms. And we thought, well, if we're gonna, if we really want to do this, we're gonna have to learn how to build software. And so we took every online course we could take, read every blog post, watch everything on YouTube. My co-founder went to a boot camp nights and weekends, and over the course of 2 years, we learned how to build software, and we rebuilt the whole thing from scratch, steeped in the feedback we were getting from our handful of users on how it actually should be built and the features it actually should have, and the workflows and how they should look, and then balancing the delicate balance between buyers and sellers on the marketplace, and getting the feedback from users to figure out what that should look like. So one thing that stands out, looking back, is that you don't learn then start. You start then learn, and the all of these ideas and assumptions we had were false, and we didn't really understand any of it until we actually got into the game, started interacting with customers and getting that experiential wisdom from their feedback, where we able to figure out, okay, no, this is the direction we need to go with this. This is how we're going to get there. It was really, really tough. And on top of all that, we self-funded it. We didn't take any outside capital. So that made it challenging as well. But it was just some of our superpowers were and still are to this day, which is consistency, showing up every day, figuring out what triaging around what the 2 or 3 biggest things we have on our plate. Let's solve those. Let's fix those. Let's move on to the next set of things, and just keeping driving the ball, moving down the field, and doing that for a decade. Now we've got a good, profitable business.
No, I like that. One of the things you hit on, and it's what drives, or what I always get pounded on with the software programmers that I've worked with, is they always have feature creep. And that can be one of 2 things. Either you keep thinking of new features or ideas that you want to incorporate into the app, or even you think of things that you didn't ever think of that you needed in the software and the app in order to make it more functional, to make it work better, that you just never anticipated, either because you didn't anticipate the users would need it, or that would be the workflow, how it goes for the flow of the application or anything else. And so it always is just one of those where, to your point, I just kind of had to laugh internally, because been there as well, where it's just every time you're just doing another revision, and you just see the dollar signs going up, and especially when you're self-funding it, it's just one where it just feels like it's a drag and a drain forever, because you always are putting more and more money in and wondering when you're ever actually going to be able to start making money. So I think that there's definitely understanding there. But I think, to your point, is you have to get you have to push through it, and you have to get that user feedback. You have to go through it. You have to start building it. You have to have an understanding and all those things. That there is just no easy way around it or replacing it. They'll just have one day you have an idea for an app, it's built, somebody builds it perfectly exactly how you envisioned, and there isn't any changes in that, and the market just, it works exactly how you envisioned, almost never. So I think that there's a good takeaway, but it sounds like as you guys stuck with it, as you continue to figure it out, iterate, update it, and otherwise figure out where it's placed in the marketplace, then it took off, and it's to what you guys have grown it to today, where it's a much larger business and has a much bigger user base.
Yeah, and to your point, that feature creep, on the one hand, it's bad for several reasons. The feature creep's bad. It builds a bloated product. It makes it harder to understand how to use. And the main impediment is it gets in the way of you and getting it in the hands of the customer, because that's really the only moment in which you really learn about what it is that people want, where you're trying to take the business. And so the feature creep is it's like, it's easier to sit behind the computer and build stuff than it is to get something in the hands of customers. And like first time founders, and I've been guilty of this, first time founders worry about features and product. Second time founders worry about distribution. Because if you've done it before and you're now doing it for the second time, you really understand that there's a minimum feature set you got to have, and you need to get that into the hands of customers. But that the bigger problem is distribution and how you're going to market it, how you're going to get people to use it. Because if you build it, they will not come. You have to innovate on like product and solving people's problems, but you also have to innovate on distribution and growth and figuring out like, what are the things, what are the unique things about this endeavor that are going to cause it to spread? And I don't mean just like pumping a bunch of money in Facebook ads. I mean, like, what is the thing that the hook in the product that's going to cause people to be exposed to it? Second time founders worry about that because they know that's harder than features.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, there is that balance, because if you don't have that minimum set of features, which you do need and which people need for the app, if you miss that, then you're never going to get adopted, because it's so hard to use, unwieldy. People aren't going to understand it or be able to use it. And so you do have to nail that. But to your point is now it's very hard. A lot of times the things that you think are essential or critical oftentimes aren't, and so now you're building it and bloating it, or otherwise even just burning time. Maybe they are great features, but you don't need them to get it launched, right? And now you're wasting time that you could have been out there selling, get adoption, getting feedback, and otherwise doing it. So yeah, I get it. It's a hard balance on both, especially if it's your first time through, but there's definitely a big learning curve. But I think to your point, if you build it 99% of the time, they're not just going to come unless they know where to. They need to know where to come, and that it's even in existence before they can even come, and you have to build that out. So I think that's some great lessons learned. Well, we could go all day about a lot of fun and the lessons learned, and we'll have to have you back on and maybe talk a little bit more about that aspect of things. But for this journey and for this episode, now as we've kind of reached the present day of where the business is at and the journey that's taken to you're at today, always have two questions I ask at the end of each podcast. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it?
Well, success is a lousy teacher. And so you always learn from your mistakes, and it's okay. You're going to make them. You just try not to make mistakes that are going to sink the company, right? You try to make mistakes. A lot of times in business, it's more like poker and not chess. It's you're making small bets. You're making bets on things, and half the time or more, they don't pan out. But some big mistakes that I have made, particularly in building GreenPal, was we delegated too soon, meaning that we delegated all of the technology development to an outside shop, and that was a disaster. And then we had the scars from that, and then it took us 3 or 4 years to build out a team, and then we delegated too late. So we delegated too soon and then delegated too late. And so a lot of times when you're building out a team and you're delegating to teammates, you want to delegate from a standpoint of stewardship and not one of abjucation. Like abjucation is, I don't know how to do this. It scares me. I don't want to learn how to do it. You handle it. Like that's always a recipe for disaster. Stewardship is, here's the scope of what I need you to do. Here's how long it should take. Here's how much I think it should cost. Here's how we're going to measure the quality of it. Here's when I want it back by, and here's our standards, and that's stewardship delegation. So once you get to a point where you can delegate from a standpoint of stewardship, you should do so very quickly, because that's a force multiplier. So that's a mistake that I made. I had to learn it the hard way, and it was a difficult one. It probably cost me 3 or 4 years.
No, and I think that it is one of those where, on the one hand, you're always wanting to delegate because you're too busy, too many things to do. And so you're wanting to hand things off. And, rightly so. If there are people who can do it better, faster, cheaper than you can, you shouldn't be focusing on it. But there is that sometimes handing it off too early, then you're going to hand it off to people and you may not give them enough direction, training, guidance, oversight. And even if they are competent and good, it can still set it up for failure and make it a much more difficult thing. And vice versa, you can get too long and then now you learn that lesson. Okay, I'm not going to delegate, and you hold on to it too long, and now it just has the opposite effect to where now when it's slowing down the business because you're not letting other people do it that could do a much better job. So I think that is a easy mistake that almost I think all entrepreneurs will make at some point, and yet it's one where it's definitely one that is great to learn from. Second question I always ask is, if you're talking to someone that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you give them?
Yeah, this stuff's hard. First off, it can be the best thing that you do with your life, so I would encourage you to do it. But the reality is that it's a 7-day-a-week thing. It's especially in the first few years. The first maybe 4 years of the business, you're doing 3 things at once. You're working in the business, so just getting the business going, serving customers, answering phone calls. In my case, at certain periods, mowing grass. And then you're working on the business. What's the marketing system look like? What's the employee recruitment system look like? What's the employee retention system look like? How do we activate cold customers? All of these things, working on the business. And then you're working on yourself. You're listening to podcasts, reading books, listening to audiobooks, listening to conferences on YouTube that you didn't go to that you probably should have. And so you're doing all 3 of these things at once. And it's really like a 7-day-a-week thing to get a business going from scratch, from 0 to 1. That's what it takes. So I would tell anybody that's new listening to this that get in the game, because only when you're in the game can you win, and be willing to just pour your soul into this thing for 3 or 4 years. And that's not just, a lot of times people get stuck in the business thing. They don't work on the business or on themselves. And so they stay stuck there and they get burnt out. Be cognizant of the fact, even down to like managing your weekly schedule, that maybe Monday through Friday is in the business, and then Saturday is on the business, and Sunday is on yourself. So you can quickly see how this is a 7-day-a-week thing. And so that's the advice that I would give anybody getting started.
I like the one thing you hit on, multiple great pieces there, but I like the continual learning or figuring things out, in the sense of, I listen to a ton of podcasts. I'm always consuming that, reading book and learning things. And it kind of like you guys found out that, hey, we just need to learn at least enough of programming or how to do this, whether it's we all do it ourselves and build it from the ground up, or at least we have enough of a foundation, then when we are hiring programmers or they are doing things, that we know whether or not is what's necessary and whether or not we'll be, doing it. I think you need to get that level of education, understanding, and always be learning. And that's one of the things, even as I got into the law firm, and I had the MBA and I had the law degree and I've been doing it for a while, and yet I'm still always learning, because what are new ways to help the customers, what are new systems, what are new ways to reach out to them and market and sales and all of those things. And even if I had a good foundation when I started, it's continuing to evolve and change, and you have to continually have that learner mindset. So I think that's a great takeaway.
Absolutely. And it's dynamic. It's a lot of times it's block and tackling. A lot of times, like I spent 6 months reading every book I could read on copywriting because I was trying to be a decent copywriter. It was in some a lawsuit with somebody over a business agreement, and I spent like 4 months reading every legal book I get my hands on, so I could be a better consumer of financial services. A lot of times you're moving it around, and you're And maybe you need to pick up a book on leadership and you spend 4 months reading everything John Maxwell ever wrote because you're now building out a team and you realize you're a crappy leader. You move it around. Like it's block and tackling for whatever you're dealing with at that stage of the game, whatever level you're on. And before you know it, you do that for 5 years. You're like, wow, I'm 80-20 good at a lot of different things. And it's kind of cool.
Yep. No, I agree. And I think that then it gives you a foundation. Even what I find is a lot of times, even as you're hiring people on, bringing them on, have new teammates or, people on that are doing things, you can still pull from that foundation in the sense that now as you're managing them, as you're directing them, making sure things are done, you may not be doing the day-to-day, but you still need to have that foundation to make sure it's done right, or that you can give them the guidance and the direction and the training they need. So I think that
that's right.
A lot of a great piece of advice. Well, we could go on all day, but as we're wrapping up the podcast for today, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to use your app, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what is the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, life's too short to mow your own yard. So just download Green Pal in the App Store or Play Store. If you want to check out the app, anybody who wants to hit me up, you can reach me on Instagram, Bryan M. Clayton. Just drop me a follow and a DM there.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, connect, download the app, and otherwise or check it out. So, well, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. Just go to inventiveguests.com. Glad to be on the show. Also, as a listener, make sure to click subscribe. Make sure to click share. Make sure to leave us a review because we want to make sure that everyone finds out about all these awesome journeys so we can help businesses along their journey to success. And in that vein, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always happy to help. Thank you again, Bryan, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks, Devin.